Alright, today I'm going to show you how to start off with an armature for your sculpture project. So the first thing you want to do is you want to come up with a sketch of your idea. So for example, if I'm just going to do like a simple fox, you don't have to draw a whole big sketch, you just need to draw it from side view. And you want to draw it proportional, so make sure it's not like too far off on the shapes and stuff. And you're basically just looking for the basic shapes of the sculpture that you're planning on doing. Don't do anything too awful complicated. Like don't do like all the fur and all that stuff. You just want to do a simple side view, okay? So this is all you need in order to get started with your sculpture. Be it like a person, animal, turtle, whatever it is that you're doing, you want to make sure that you start off with just the basic shapes, because that's what we're going to start with the sculpture, is just the basic shapes. Once you're done with that, now you have a couple things that you can start your sculpture with for the armature. You can either do like a wire armature where you're using wire. This will make your sculpture a lot stronger and less likely to break. Or you can just make it strictly out of tinfoil without the wire, and that also works. So I'm going to be doing a combo of wire and tinfoil. It's up to you what materials you want to use. Experiment. If something doesn't work, try something else, okay? All right, so if you are choosing to do wires, I would suggest doing what's called the wire sketch. Now, when I have students do this, I always have them draw it the size that they want to sculpt. So this is about how big I'm going to sculpt my sculpture. So here's an example of about how big the sculpture would end up being. Don't sculpt super, super, super tiny, because otherwise it's really hard to carve. Something that can fit in the palm of your hand is a pretty good size. You can go a little bit bigger. Here's an example of a bigger sculpture. You can do something bigger. I always just say draw on a scrap piece of paper, because then it doesn't end up being too big. As long as it fits on a scrap paper, it should be an ideal size to sculpt. So I'm just going to do a little miniature one, so I'm not using too much material. So once you get done with the basic shapes, you want to make sure you understand like head, neck, body, limbs, and tail and wings or anything like that. What you're going to do next is you're going to do a wire sketch if you're planning on using wire. The wire sketch is going to have head, neck, spine, and tail all connected with no gaps. And then you're also going to have the length of the legs like this. They're going to go all the way up to the body, and the length of the back leg as well. They'll go all the way up to the body, okay? Now, when you go to do the actual wire, you're going to end up with 3 pieces of wire. The first piece of wire is going to look head, neck, body, tail. And then the other pieces of wire, they're going to be the length of the legs, but you don't want to break them. You're just going to do a frown for the width of the shoulders, and then down on the other side for the other legs. Same thing for the back legs. You're just going to go up, do a frown for like the width of the hips, and then go down like this. And then what you're going to do is you're going to end up just taping them or attaching them together. So the way that you do that, you just get a piece of wire. You're just going to roll it out. You're going to trace the wire onto the line, and just using your fingers to help bend them. And it's okay if it's not perfect. Your goal is just to get it somewhat close to it. So you're just going to bend it, and then once you get to the end of it, you're just going to use some wire cutters and just snip off wherever you want to end it, like this. So this is pretty close to what I have here for my wire sketch for my body. Then what I would do is I would go ahead and do my wire for my legs. So after I get my body, then I'm just going to take my wire, I'm just going to frown it until it's pretty close to the shape that I want. I'm just going to snip it. So there's one set of legs. It's always better to make the legs longer than what you need, because you can always trim off or bend up the wire for the other parts. You would much rather have it too long than too small. All right, so now that I have all of my wire pieces, there's a couple different ways that you can put it together. I usually just tape it together. You want to use masking tape. You don't want to use clear tape. So I'm just going to get about like a thumb-sized piece of tape. And then what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to take the legs, and then I'm going to tape the center of the legs like this first. And then I'm just going to take my body. So I'm going to say that this is my front legs. I'm just going to take the head of the sculpture. I'm just going to poke it through the tape like this, and I'm just going to slide it down to where the shoulders will be connected. Then I'm just going to wrap that tape around the body, okay? That'll make it a lot easier, so it's not going to fall off as easily. Now, I always say give it a wiggle test. If it moves, then it's probably not too sturdy. So I usually always tape at least twice. So now that that feels pretty good, I'm just going to tape it from underneath and then go up the neck again, just to extra secure it so it doesn't fall off. So it'll look kind of like this. It's okay if they move back and forth like this. Whenever you add the tin foil, it'll make it more sturdy. All right, then my next piece of legs, just gonna do the same thing, about a thumb-sized piece. Wrap the tape around the center first, like this, just like 1 or 2 times. Usually 2 is better than 1. Leave a piece that's sticky out, Then I'm just going to slide, instead of sliding it up the head, I'm going to slide it down the tail this time. Doop, push. All right. And then you want to slide it down until it gets to where the tail meets the spine. And then you're just going to fold it down and squish. Once you have that all squished together, it'll look kind of like this. And I'm just going to add another piece of tape just for reinforcement, because it's always better to have a stronger armature. The stronger your armature, the stronger your sculpture will end up being. So you want to try to make that as strong as you possibly can. Once you're pretty satisfied with the strength of your armature, then what you want to do is you want to go ahead and put your sculpture in the pose that you want it in. So right now mine's just kind of standing, which is kind of basic. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to bend the wire into the pose that I want. So I'm going to make the head looking up a little bit more. I'm going to make the legs a little bit more bent, so it's maybe more in a playful pose, because I think that would be kind of cute. So the legs will be bent forward. I'm going to make the back legs bent backwards. Something that I always think about whenever I'm doing back legs especially, most mammals and reptiles will have a thigh, and then they'll have an ankle that sticks out, and then the foot will come down from there. So it helps if you bend it kind of almost like a zigzag for those back legs. Just a little helpful tip. You don't have to do that, especially if you're doing more cartoony things, but if you want to have a little bit more sense of realism, that can help. So now I have kind of my pose. I want to kind of tweak the wire until I have the pose where I'm satisfied with it. Once I am satisfied with the pose, now I am ready to start adding the bulk on it, okay? So for the bulk, I'm going to be using tinfoil. You can use newspaper or just scrap paper as well. Tinfoil I just find works really well for me personally, because it's easy to manipulate and easy to fold and stuff. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a chunk of tinfoil. It helps if you, now if you have something really thick, like say like, oh, I don't know, like a turtle or something, it's okay to start with a ball first, and that's totally fine. But all I'm going to do is I'm just going to squish it gently. I always say don't squish it completely, because if it's completely squished, it's hard to work with. So make sure that you can still give a little bit of squish to it. So I'm going to start with what I call a hot dog. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wrap it around the thicker parts of the body. So the armature is to help support the clay when you go to sculpt. So if it's going to be thicker than your thumb width-wise, then you want to add tinfoil. So on my legs, I'm not planning on making my legs super bulky, so I don't need to add tinfoil to my legs, but I do want my head, neck, and body, and I want to have a fluffy tail, so I'm going to bulk those all up with tinfoil. I think I'll also bulk up the thighs with tinfoil so that it's not too close. So I'm going to take my wire, or my tinfoil, I'm just going to wrap it. I usually like to start in between the feet. I'm just going to twist it around the body like this. And then once I have it twisted around the body, then I can squeeze it so that it gets more solid, right? And I'm just going to keep doing that. You want to keep in mind the clay is going to add a little bit of thickness to it, so make sure that you don't add too much tinfoil. If you accidentally add too much tinfoil, you can always take it off or cut it off, one of the two. So I'm just going to keep adding tinfoil and squeezing until I get the desired amount that I want. So here you can see on this other one that I was working on, I have the head. This one's going to be my dog Ratchet. He has a long muzzle, so I went ahead and added a muzzle. You can add ears if you have like really long ears, but you don't have to add ears with tinfoil. And then you can see that I've already kind of gone down the body, and I've started thickening up the legs as well. So on this one, I just have to do a little bit more. I'm going to go ahead and do like just a ball, gently, not too tight. I'm just going to do a ball for the head. I'm just going to poke that on to the wire like this, and then squeeze it on. Now, if you have troubles with getting something to stick, you are allowed to use tape. Tape is very useful. So if you need to tape things on to keep them from moving, you can add tape and kind of almost like mummify in a way in order to get it to stop falling. Now, keep in mind anything that you're sculpting, really pay attention to if you have a reference, like look at photos. That's very helpful. The neck is a little too skinny for what I'm wanting, so I'm going to add some more tinfoil around it just to bulk it up. And it's all about trial and error. Try it. If it doesn't look good, just take it off and then try again, okay? So don't feel like you have to keep it the exact way that it looks. All right, so the last thing I'm going to bulk up is the tail. So I'm just going to get a big chunk of tinfoil, crunch it around the tail, make it kind of pointy on the end, and then just keep going from there. I'm just going to add a little bit more at the base of the tail. I want a really fluffy tail. I think fluffy tails look cool. So like this, squeeze, squeeze, squeeze. And I think that looks pretty cool. The tail's a little obnoxiously big, but I want to have a really fluffy tail animal. All right, so the only other thing that I see that I would want to bulk up is maybe the thighs. In order to do that, I'm just going to take, and this is a really good handy tip for if you are doing legs in general, is get a kind of like a rectangular piece like this that's longer. If you want thinner legs, make sure it's not a super thick piece of tin foil, but I can start with a flat piece like this. I'm going to scrunch it into that kind of hot dog shape. And then what I'm going to do is I'm just going to start on the back of the body, not the sides of the body or the bottom of the body. I'm going to start on the back of the body, go over the spine, and then I'm just going to push down the legs like this. That way I can just scrunch it on both sides and it's pretty secure. That works the same for the front legs as well. So I'm just going to twist on only the thighs though. So I'm just doing that twisting motion so that I can have some thicker thighs for my fox character. So just a little bit around these and then just keep going from there. Alright,
I would suggest adding at least a very thin layer of either tinfoil or tape to the wire because the clay doesn't like to stick to the wire. So I regret not putting it on much later. But yeah, so any wire that's exposed, try to cover it in either tape or tinfoil.
At this point, I am done with my armature. I could make the belly a little bigger if I want to, if I want a thicker animal. That's kind of up to me. So that's all you have to do for the armature. After you get to this step, give it a wiggle test. If anything shakes really bad, you might want to add a little bit more tape or a little bit more wire. So here I see my arms are wiggling, so I am going to secure that with a little bit more tape. But otherwise, as long as everything passes what I call the wiggle test, then you are good to get started on your actual clay part. So I'm going to show you that in a separate video. That way this one doesn't run too long because you want to do this first before you start with clay. So once more, give everything a wiggle test, kind of shake it pretty vigorously. If something moves or falls off, your sculpture's not ready. You want to make sure that it's ready. And before you start with clay, put it back in its pose. Make sure you are satisfied with the look of the pose. And then you're ready to move on to clay. All right, I'll see you guys in the next one.